Good morning, my brothers and sisters. God bless you. I hope you are weathering the coronavirus quarantine in overcoming fashion. I'm going to ask the question this morning: does the Bible teach the appearance of a third temple? Well, this is an important subject matter that we want to discuss today about the third temple. Obviously speaking, there are many people, even in the realm of Christianity, that don't believe there's going to be a third temple that is rebuilt. Also, they don't believe, many people don't believe that there's going to be a temple at all, especially from the Islamic faith, that there won't be another temple built on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. But obviously, this is a very important understanding to have, because in the end times, we see that the temple is going to play a very important role and a very important function in the end time scenarios, especially as it relates to the Antichrist and the return of the Messiah. So this morning I want to just briefly go over a little temple history and try to answer this question: what does the Bible teach relative to the appearance of a third temple, let alone the rebuilding of one? So let's start off with the first temple. Well, you all know that the first temple of God was in Jerusalem, obviously built in Jerusalem. It was patterned after the tabernacle in the wilderness. So we know that when God instituted the tabernacle in the wilderness and had the Holy of Holies in his presence, would travel with the people of God, we know that King Solomon was commissioned by the Lord through his father, King David, to complete and rebuild or build the temple of God. And we find that in 1 Kings chapter 6, verse 1 through 38. There's a beautiful story about the completion of that temple. And that was about 1,000 years, actually 950 years before Jesus was even on the earth, that this first temple was constructed. And that place where it was constructed is the place where the second temple was constructed as well. So it survived over 360 years. And then after 360 years that temple, after Solomon built the temple, the Babylonians under King Nebuchadnezzar, if you remember the story in 2 Kings chapter 25, in the year 586 BC, this is before Jesus, of course, he came in and completely destroyed the temple, took all the temple artifacts, removed everything, took the Jews into captivity. And that's when you read about when you hear the term Babylonian captivity, that's where it started, at the destruction of the temple in the days of Nebuchadnezzar. And one of the things I want to tell you about that first temple that Solomon built. Solomon built a temple that was stunningly beautiful. It was a work of art, and you can read about that, of course, in 2 Kings. But the reality is that every single element, every single workman that was utilized was a gifted individual and the top of their field. And the Lord commissioned all of them through Solomon to rebuild this stunningly beautiful temple. Now, 48 years later, the Persians, after this temple was destroyed, the second temple, or the first temple was destroyed by the Babylonians, 48 years later, the Persians permitted the Jews to return from the Babylonian exile. And you remember that story. It was about 538 BC under King Cyrus and Darius, that in the days of Ezra and Nehemiah, in your Bible, you can study that, the Jews began to rebuild the walls of the city and the temple itself. And it was completed. It took about 15 years for that temple, times of Ezra and Nehemiah, to be rebuilt. But the problem was it wasn't the same. It was not as grand. It was not as beautiful as the Temple of Solomon. So it was kind of like almost a second-rate type of temple, but it did get rebuilt. The intense spiritual nature of the second temple couldn't, or the intense nature of the first temple couldn't even be compared with the second temple. The second temple didn't have the constant open miracles that the first temple had. It was really somewhat of a lesser structure in spiritual and physical ways as well. Prophecy will also disappear during the early years of the second temple. That's one of the marks of the second temple. When God was speaking to his people, he prophesied all throughout its history. And then in probably the last 500 years, prophecy stopped. And this was during the years of the second temple. Now you will notice that in the second temple, that the Ark of the Covenant that was in the first temple is gone now. It's not in the second temple of Ezra and Nehemiah. And although there is a Holy of Holies, it's empty. It's standing empty. And the special gold-lined cedar chest, which had contained the tablets of the Ten Commandments and the manna and Aaron's rod, is all gone. Now, what happened to it? From the first temple, we know all that stuff was in there. It was very powerful. Miracles were happening all the time. By the time the second temple was built, the Holy of Holies is empty. Aaron's rod that budded is gone. So what happened in the interim? Well, the Talmud, which is sort of a commentary on the Torah, which is the Old Testament law, really relates two different opinions on it. Number one, the first opinion says that the Babylonians took everything into captivity. And once the Babylonians took the Holy of Holies, the Ark of the Covenant, all that, Aaron's rod, they completely demolished the temple area. When they took that back into Babylon, it was completely disappeared don't know if they destroyed it or they buried it or what happened to it. And the second opinion that the Talmud offers is that it was hidden by King Josiah, who had anticipated the invasion of Babylon, the Babylonians, and the destruction of the temple. And he took it and hid it somewhere. Now, there are documentaries. You can go on Google. You can see that in Ethiopia, there's a place where they think the Ark of the Covenant is, and it's kind of protected by these Ethiopian Jewish priests who won't let anybody in there. And the stories go on and on and on. But needless to say, from the point of the Babylonian captivity all the way through, no matter what the temples were, the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy of Holies was a place where it was desolated. The Ark of the Covenant was gone. It was in this temple, in this second temple, that if you remember the story, that King Antiochus, the Syrian king Antiochus Epiphanes, he desecrated